The yellow toothbrush was still wet. That was the first thing I noticed when I walked into the bathroom this morning. Hers. Always the yellow one. Mine was blue. Hers was yellow. Unspoken rules. And it was wet. She hadn't lived here in 6 weeks. I stood there, barefoot on the cold tile, staring at it like it might blink first. Like it might explain how it got damp. The light was off. The mirror still had a fingerprint on it, small, left side, like she used to do when she wiped off steam after showers. I checked the towel rack. Her towel, gray with a faded bleach stain, hung there dry, undisturbed. Like everything else in this house since she took her keys, her curling iron, and half the spices, but left the paprika and her wedding ring in a cereal bowl. I called her once. She didn't answer. I didn't leave a message. What do you even say to someone who ghosted their own life? Then at 7:42 p.m. she texted me. Where are you? That was it. No hey. No punctuation. No apology. Just 4 words that made my molars hurt. Where am I? I was on the floor of her sister's apartment, half-dressed, eating cold Chinese food out of a plastic container with a cracked lid. Lena, her sister, was asleep in the bedroom, curled up under the blanket my wife gave her last Christmas. I wiped my hands on a receipt and stared at the message for maybe 5 minutes. And then, I replied, "At your sister's. Don't wait for me." I don't remember how long I held the phone before I hit send. I just remember the moment after. The silence. The soft hum of Lena's air purifier in the other room. The realization that nothing I knew, or pretended to know, was real anymore. And still, that stupid yellow toothbrush stayed wet. I didn't sleep that night. Not a wink. Lena stayed in the bedroom, door cracked just slightly, her bare foot peeking out from under the comforter like some strange reminder that this wasn't just a bad dream. I sat on her couch, same brown velvet one they both used to sprawl across during holiday movies, and stared at the wall like it might whisper instructions. I knew what I did. I knew it was nuclear. You don't text, "I'm at your sister's," and expect anything to stay standing afterward. But here's the thing no one tells you. When everything's already broken, sometimes pressing the red button feels like mercy. Like finally ripping the cord out of a machine that's been screaming in your ear for years. Around 4:15 a.m., I found it, the bracelet. It was tucked into the pocket of Lena's denim jacket, draped over a bar stool. Black leather, tiny gold clasp. The exact bracelet I bought Dana on our 3rd anniversary, when we couldn't afford real gifts, so I sold my signed vinyl copy of The Wall to pay for it. She cried when I gave it to her. Swore she'd never take it off. And yet here it was, in her sister's apartment. Forgotten. Or planted. I held it in my hand like a ticking clock. The clasp was still stiff. No scratches. Like she never even wore it. My stomach twisted, not from the betrayal or the guilt, but from the realization that this wasn't just a messy situation. This was planned. I opened the bedroom door slowly, just enough to see Lena curled up, her hand tucked under her cheek, a slight line of drool on the pillow. Peaceful. And for a second, I hated her. I hated how easy she made this look. How she stepped into my life like it was a costume she'd been waiting to wear. Then I heard the sound, a dull buzz, low and rhythmic. It was coming from under the coffee table. I reached down and found it. A phone. But not Lena's. Not mine. A cheap flip phone. One of those prepaid burners you can grab at gas stations. It was vibrating softly against the wood. One new message. "He's with you, isn't he?" No name. No number. Just those 6 words. I dropped it like it burned. Because the worst part? It wasn't Dana's voice I heard when I read it in my head. It was someone else's. Someone who wasn't supposed to know I existed. I don't know how long I sat there staring at that burner phone after the message came through. The room felt colder, or maybe it was just my skin realizing something my brain hadn't caught up to yet. This wasn't just a secret phone. It was active, and whoever was messaging it, they weren't guessing. They knew. They knew where I was. They knew who I was with. That message wasn't a question. It was a statement wrapped in a trap. The kind you answer without thinking and regret before you finish typing. I didn't touch the phone again for maybe 10 minutes. I just sat cross-legged on the floor, knees aching, brain spinning, heart knocking in my throat like it was trying to get out. Lena didn't stir. The apartment was silent, save for the occasional soft whistle from the old heating vents. I picked the phone back up, wiped the screen with the sleeve of my hoodie, and started pressing buttons. It didn't have a passcode. Of course it didn't. People don't lock devices they think are invisible. The interface was basic. Cheap preloaded icons, blurry screen, no emojis. I went straight to the contacts list. There were only 4 saved numbers. 2 were just initials, M and R. One was named Locker, and the last was Danny. That one made my breath catch. Because Dana's full name is Dana Lee, and no one called her Danny except her father, and he'd been dead for 5 years. I opened the message thread under Danny. The last sent message was from 2 days ago. It said, "He won't see it coming. Just act normal." I scrolled up. More messages. Choppy, coded, vague. One of them said, "Sister's place still good?" Another read, "Give him something real to focus on. Distract if needed." But the worst wasn't the texts. It was the photo. One blurry image, tucked between a string of innocuous messages. It was me, sitting on a bench outside my apartment. Hoodie on, headphones in, staring at my phone like an idiot, completely unaware someone was watching. Taken from a car, or maybe across the street. It was recent. I was wearing the same jacket I had on 2 nights ago when I walked beans around the block. I've never felt smaller than in that moment, knowing I'd become someone's subject. Someone's mark. This wasn't a breakup anymore. This wasn't cheating. It wasn't even personal. This was calculated. There was a plan. And I was walking through it like a dumb actor in a play where everyone else had already read the ending. Lena stirred. I heard her shift in the bed, the frame creaking softly, followed by a sleepy exhale. I should have put the phone back. I should have thrown it in the sink. I should have woken her up and demanded answers. Instead, I pocketed it. Because deep down, I already knew. This wasn't Lena's phone. It wasn't Dana's either. This belonged to someone else entirely. By morning, I wasn't sure if I'd slept or blacked out. I remember closing my eyes on the couch, the burner phone tucked beneath the couch cushion like a loaded weapon, and when I opened them again, the room had changed. Sunlight was bleeding through the slats in the blinds, dust particles spinning lazily in the golden light like nothing was wrong. Lena was already awake, sitting at the kitchen counter in a sweatshirt that didn't belong to her, mine, and sipping coffee like it was just another Thursday. When she saw me sit up, she smiled too quickly. "You snore," she said lightly, avoiding eye contact as she turned back to her mug. I mumbled something back, some half-syllable that meant good morning, and I know something you don't at the same time. My fingers were still wrapped around the burner phone, hidden in the folds of the blanket. I hadn't told her I found it. Not yet. Because if she was part of this, I needed to be sure. And if she wasn't, well, I had no idea what I was protecting her from. After an awkward breakfast, if you can call half a banana and 2 sips of cold brew a meal, I made up an excuse about needing to go home to feed Beans, which was partially true. He'd probably eaten the leg off the couch by now. Lena kissed me on the cheek at the door. It felt wrong in a new way, not because of what we'd done, but because of what I now knew was swirling around us. Unseen but tightening like a noose. I didn't go home. Instead, I drove across town to a strip of rusting storage units near the train tracks, the kind of place that always smells like wet concrete and regret. One of the contacts on the burner phone had sent a location pin the day before, buried in a thread with only vague, one-line exchanges. The name attached to it had been Locker, but there were no numbers, just GPS coordinates that led here. The keypad at the gate was busted. A man sitting in a plastic lawn chair behind the office waved me through with a greasy sandwich in one hand and a lit cigarette in the other. Unit 109. I remember because the padlock was already snapped open when I got there, just hanging loose, like it was expecting me. My heartbeat wasn't just in my chest anymore. It was in my ears, my wrists, the backs of my knees. Inside, it was empty. Almost. In the middle of the concrete floor was a folding table. On it sat a laptop, an old hard drive, and a manila envelope thick with printed photos. And on the wall, taped up like a collage of someone's unraveling, were stills from what looked like security footage. My apartment building, the stairwell, the parking lot, and in one of them, barely visible but unmistakably there, Dana. Not from weeks ago, from last night. Timestamped just 2 hours after she sent that text. "Where are you?" There she was, standing in the hallway outside my apartment, hair pulled back, hood up, staring at my door like she was waiting for something or someone. But the camera caught more than just her face. It caught what she left behind. A small black object she tucked behind the potted plant by my door. I recognized it immediately. A motion sensor. The The same kind I used to install in client offices back when I did freelance security system work. I stood there in that storage unit, staring at the still frame, realizing my own wife had bugged my apartment. That every movement, every moment, was being recorded. That even now, as I was watching her, she might be watching me. But none of it, none, prepared me for what was in the envelope. Because once I opened it, once I saw the photos she'd taken, the ones she printed and labeled by date, my whole idea of what this break was shattered. Because I wasn't the only one she'd been tracking. She'd been following Lena, too. And not just following. She'd been meeting with someone else. Someone whose face I knew but never expected to see tangled in this web. My brother. There's a particular kind of quiet that happens when reality rearranges itself around you. It's not peaceful, and it's not calm. It's hollow. Like the walls of your life are absorbing sound because they know nothing you say will change what you just learned. That's what I felt as I stood there, holding a printed photo of my brother and my wife in the same frame, sitting at a small cafe I'd never seen before, laughing about something I'd never be told. Her hand was on his wrist. Not romantic, but too familiar. Intimate in the way that history often is. The kind that makes you wonder how far back something really started. There were more photos. 16 in total. All dated. All labeled in the top right corner in Dana's handwriting. Some were candid, like they didn't know she was watching. Some were zoomed in so tight. You could see the outline of his keychain clipped to his belt loop. The one I gave him when he totaled his first car and walked away without a scratch. I remember that day because Dana made us grilled cheese and tomato soup, and we sat on the floor of our old apartment, swearing we'd never let anything come between us again. The joke writes itself now. But what got me the most wasn't the photos. It was the voice recording. I found it on the hard drive, hidden in a folder marked with a name that meant nothing to me at the time, Stillwater. One audio file, about 8 minutes long, recorded just last week. It started with the rustling of clothes, footsteps, ambient street noise. Then her voice. Dana's. Low, direct, measured. No, he doesn't know. Merrick's not built for confrontation. He folds. He folds and disappears. A pause. He still thinks I left because I needed space. He doesn't realize it was a test. A test? The word hit me like a slap. I sat down right there on the dusty concrete, next to a stack of unused packing boxes, and listened to her talk like I was some lab rat who failed to notice the maze had changed. She talked about me like I was a stranger, about how predictable I was, how I'd eventually look for comfort in the wrong place, and that's when he would step in. He always wanted to be the savior, she said. Let him save him. Let him save me? I shut the laptop before the file finished. I couldn't listen anymore. My mouth was dry, but my palms were sweating. My brother, Callum, wasn't just in on something. He was a variable in a plan, a piece on the board. And worse, so was I? I left the storage unit without locking it. I didn't care who saw it. Let them piece it together. I was done playing careful. I drove home in silence, the city looking unfamiliar through the windshield, like someone had rebuilt it while I was gone. When I walked into the apartment, Beans didn't even bark. He just looked at me from the couch with tired eyes, tail thumping once against the cushion. He knew something was wrong. Animals always know. On the kitchen table was the plate of food I made the night Dana left. Reheated spaghetti with freezer-burned garlic bread. I never threw it away. I kept it there like some kind of twisted monument. It was still there. Mold now colonizing one side of the toast, like nature reclaiming what I refused to let go of. I should have asked the question a year ago. Maybe longer. The question wasn't, is she cheating? Or, is there someone else? It was this. What version of me is she even married to in her head? Because I'm starting to think the man she built in her story, the weak, passive, background husband, wasn't me at all. There's a strange clarity that comes with betrayal. It's not clean or cinematic like people think. It's not someone screaming in the rain or throwing a glass against a wall. It's quiet. It's ugly. And it strips away every convenient lie you've ever told yourself about who you are and what you're owed. That night, after the storage unit and the recordings and the photos I couldn't unsee, I sat at the edge of my bed and stared at my phone for what felt like hours. Not checking texts. Not making calls. Just staring. Because I realized something I hadn't let myself think until that moment. This didn't start 6 weeks ago. This started way before Dana ever said she needed a break. Before the affair. Before the surveillance. This started the day I stopped noticing her. Not the kind of noticing you do when you say you look nice or ask how her day was. I mean the real kind. The kind where you actually see the cracks in someone's voice and lean into them instead of walking away. And I hadn't done that in a long time. I was so wrapped up in surviving, in keeping our life together, that I didn't realize it had already rotted underneath. I thought paying the bills on time and remembering to water her succulents meant I was being a good husband. But all I was doing was maintaining a corpse. Around 11:45 p.m., my phone buzzed. No caller ID, just a vibration and a blank screen. I almost didn't answer, but something in me wanted to hear whatever voice was brave enough to reach me directly. I picked up. Silence. Then, a click, like someone had lifted the receiver of a landline in the background. Then a voice, male, low and unsure, barely above a whisper. He's getting too close. I told you we should have pulled it already. And then it went dead. I stood there, arm frozen midair, phone still against my ear like I was trying to pull meaning out of static. I checked the call log. Nothing. No trace. No number. Just a ghost of a warning left hanging in the dark. But that wasn't the part that really shook me. When I opened my messages afterward, there was a notification I hadn't noticed before, a deleted message. From Dana. It had been sent and unsent at some point earlier in the evening. And thanks to a glitch in the system, or fate, who knows, a fragment still showed in the preview window. Just 5 words. I didn't want to lie. That was it. No context. No timestamp. Just a fragment that screamed louder than any apology ever could. At exactly 2:09 a.m., someone knocked on my door. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. Not the kind neighbors make when they need to borrow something. The kind that say I know you're in there even if no words are spoken. Beans whimpered low from the living room. I didn't move. I just stood in the hallway, barefoot, phone still in my hand, heart hammering in my chest like it was trying to warn me. I didn't open the door. I waited, breath caught in my throat, until whoever it was walked away. I looked through the peephole 30 seconds later. No one was there. Just an envelope on the welcome mat. No name. No return address. Inside was a single item. A printed screenshot of my voicemail inbox. One of the messages had been highlighted in red marker. The timestamp was from 3 days ago. I hadn't seen it before. I never got a notification. But when I played it back, my knees almost gave out. It was Lena, crying. I didn't know they'd take it this far. I thought it was just to scare you. Callum said you wouldn't find out. Please, Merrick, whatever you do, don't go to the cabin. Don't. The message cut off. That was all I got. Just her voice, begging me not to step into something I was already neck-deep in. And suddenly I realized this wasn't about Dana anymore. It wasn't about cheating. It wasn't about a failing marriage or a broken heart or even revenge. This was about something much, much older. Something they all knew. Except me. The drive to the cabin was like slipping into a memory I didn't remember agreeing to. Trees swallowed the road in both directions, leaning in like they were trying to listen. The GPS stopped working 30 minutes out. Just froze, then blinked out like it had given up on me. I kept driving anyway. The voicemail had been short, but the fear in Lena's voice was unmistakable, the kind that doesn't come from guilt. It comes from knowing something is already too late to stop. I hadn't been to the cabin in years. It was owned by Dana's side of the family, some inherited property from a distant uncle, tucked deep in the woods like a forgotten chapter. We'd stayed there twice early in our marriage, when we still laughed at small things and played cards by flashlight when the power went out. But it had always felt off. Even then. Like the walls had ears. Like we weren't supposed to be there at all. I pulled off the road and followed the gravel path up past the tree line. The cabin stood as I remembered it. Hunched slightly to the left, windows dark, chimney crumbling. But something was different. The front door was open. Not wide, just enough to whisper invitation. I parked the car, left the engine running, and approached slowly, each step pressing louder into the dead leaves beneath me. I didn't bring a weapon. I don't know if I expected to need one. I just had the burner phone in my pocket, the envelope from the night before, and a headache blooming like a storm in the back of my skull. Inside, everything was still. Dust clung to the air like static. The old couch in the corner was draped in a moth-eaten sheet. The fireplace was stuffed with newspapers dated 2 years back. But on the table, cleared of dust, strangely untouched, was a leather-bound journal. I didn't recognize it at first. It looked too pristine, too new. But the second I opened it and saw the handwriting, My stomach flipped. It was Dana's, but not the Dana I knew. The entries were chaotic, raw, almost frantic. Some were written in full paragraphs. Others were just fragmented phrases, scratched in with angry pressure. My name appeared again and again, not with hatred, but with confusion, with frustration. She didn't know what to do with me. She didn't trust me. She didn't believe I saw her anymore. But in one entry, dated nearly a year before she left, everything shifted. Callum thinks it's time I show Merrick what really happened. He says he's old enough now, that he deserves the truth. But what if it breaks him worse than the lie did? I stopped reading. My hand shook, the book trembling between my fingers. What truth? What lie? And why would my brother, be the one to decide that? I kept flipping. The entries turned darker. There were mentions of a storage drive, of recordings, of a file she called the tape. She said Lena had seen it by accident. That's why she couldn't be trusted anymore. That's why she had to be managed. Managed? That word chilled me more than anything else in that journal. Dana wasn't documenting. She was cataloging people, sorting them like pieces on a board, including me. And then, on the very last page, a single line. If he ever gets this far, it means they lost control. And if they've lost control, they'll come for him too. The cabin was too quiet. Suddenly, I became hyper-aware of every creak in the floorboards, every gust of wind against the siding. I closed the journal, grabbed the burner phone from my pocket, and checked it out of instinct. One new message. No number. Just a video file. I hit play. It was grainy footage, black and white, time-stamped 7 years ago. The setting, my father's old garage. I recognized the shelves, the half-finished workbench, the cracked cement. But it wasn't my dad on screen. It was me. Or it looked like me. Just younger. Maybe 17. Standing in the corner, facing someone off-screen. My voice was shaking. The audio wasn't great, but I caught a few words. You said no one would find out. Another voice responded. A woman's. Calm. Measured. They won't. Not unless you forget who you are. The screen went black. I stared at the phone until it powered itself down. Battery dead. Maybe on purpose. Maybe by design. I wasn't just part of someone's story. I'd been written into it a long time ago, and I was just now beginning to remember. I didn't drive home after the cabin. I just kept moving. The road curved and blurred, and the sky shifted from night into the kind of silver dawn that looks like the world hasn't quite decided to wake up yet. I didn't have a plan. Not anymore. But the memories were coming back, one by one. Pieces I hadn't asked for, fragments I thought I'd imagined. Only now I understood why they'd always felt off. They weren't imagined. They were hidden. I stopped the car at a rest area overlooking an empty lake. No one around, but a few early fishermen setting up gear. I sat on the hood and let the morning bleed into me. The breeze smelled clean, like pine and new chances. For the first time in weeks, I let myself breathe. Fully, deeply, and I didn't feel like I was being watched. Callum called later that day. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail. Said he was sorry. Said he never meant for it to go that far. That Dana had convinced him it was for my good. That there were things about our dad, about what happened the night he died, that I wasn't supposed to carry. That I'd been shielded. But secrets, even well-intended ones, have weight. And someone always ends up crushed underneath them. I did meet with Lena 2 days later. She looked thinner, drained, but there was a softness in her eyes I hadn't seen before, something unguarded. She apologized for her part in everything. Said she tried to pull out when it got too real. Said she was scared of Dana, but more scared of herself for how easily she'd crossed the line when she thought no one would ever find out. I forgave her, not because it was easy, but because dragging it all behind me would only mean I'd keep reliving it. And I was done playing other people's roles. I needed my life to be mine again, flawed, imperfect, and real. Dana never came back. She didn't need to. I think we both knew her part in my story had ended long before the first betrayal. Maybe we were both just too afraid to say it out loud. I heard she left the country for a while. I hope she finds what she was looking for. I stayed in town, sold the apartment, gave beans to Lena's cousin, who lives on a farm and sends me pictures of him chasing chickens like he owns the place. I started teaching part-time, beginner audio editing, of all things, to high school kids who think cassettes are ancient artifacts. And for the first time in forever, I don't feel like a background character in someone else's movie. A few nights ago, I found myself sitting in the new apartment, a modest second-story walk-up with creaky floors and warm light. There's a record player in the corner and a plant I haven't managed to kill yet. And on the wall above my desk, I pinned a small piece of paper. It says, "Just act normal." Deleted text, 2023. A reminder that no one ever acts normal when they're telling the truth. And that if you're being told to, you probably shouldn't. There was no big confrontation, no revenge, no Hollywood-style closure, just a slow unraveling, then a choice. And I chose to stop running.